All right, everyone. This episode of Address to Sess is brought to you by Full Sail University. And with that, we are starting this jet-lagged edition of Address to Sess. 2 weeks ago, we did it. It was all international. And we talked to people from around the world. In fact, someone from Indonesia and someone from Denmark. Same show. Who's done that before? Probably some people. But we're not going to do that. Well, we can do that again today, but it isn't time for that. What you're seeing now is a man who has returned from international travel. I was out in St. Petersburg, Russia last week for the Microsoft Imagine Cup, which is a student design competition. I was a judge for it. And I have returned alive, but slightly tired. So will this make me, unstable? Will I start to drool? There's only one way to find out. It will happen in the next hour. We are bringing in a handful of people, and of course, we have our always reliable moderator, Nick Robinson. Nick, wave.
Hello.
Everyone wave to Nick. Nick. All right. And with that particular topic, because let's just say it's actually been, a little bit on the quiet side this week in terms of game news. We are in the depths of summer. Games are coming out. Of course, heated discussions involving new consoles. I have a feeling, I'm just going to guess somehow that might come up. But let's see where the conversation goes. I don't even care if it doesn't even stay on games because there are other things in the world. Who knows? Nick, do you want to bring someone in?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's talk to Dustin Holden.
Dustin, where are you from? Oh, Dustin, unmute.
Click in the upper.
Yeah, there's a microphone thingy in the upper right.
Upper right corner.
Thank you.
There we go.
Yes, I'm from Georgia.
There you go. I'm going to turn you up on my end as well. There we go. Dustin, where are you from?
Georgia.
Georgia, like Atlanta, Georgia, or the other parts of the
Exactly.
Awesome. What's on your mind today? What has been your pressing need?
I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of the hate on the Xbox One. No one seems to trust Microsoft, and it's a little sad. I mean, they have experience, with the hardware that they're working with. I mean, they're the company that's been developing for, the x86 platform since the early 90s.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that in terms of the chipset, their level of experience with it. Obviously, Sony has experience making consoles. That is something that they're rather experienced in as well. Where do you think the hate is coming from?
Just the raw numbers. I mean, mostly just people not understanding, how powerful the tools are that are required to create these games. So I mean, if you look at the PS3, one of the biggest issues was the documentation, how hard it was to develop, and I think there just has to be some trust that Microsoft has the tools and the knowledge to create something, a little bit better that, Sony can't.
Yeah, no. Obviously, if you've been following me, like a lot of my sort of assessment of what's gone wrong for Microsoft there has less to do even with what's under the hood than how they kind of explained all their policies and all that stuff. They really kind of tripped over themselves when it comes to the DRM. If they had explained things a little more elegantly, do you think they would be in the same situation they're in right now?
Honestly, that was the biggest flop ever.
I think that's the thing.
I don't understand why they didn't, explain so much. I mean, what we see now is that they had the perfect idea, but it just seemed like they wanted the family sharing so bad that, anyone that was against it was, just whatever, just go on.
Yeah, I mean,
but no one knew what it was.
I mean, I think there was some suspicion that there was something happening about DRM. This was a question that both Sony and Microsoft were being presented with. On top of that, of course, the matter of used games. And, they just didn't understand how important it was to address that. Because if Phil Harrison hadn't made the comments he did at the Xbox reveal up in Redmond, they wouldn't have been saying anything. And I don't think they appreciate the fact that that vacuum, that silence, was going to be just as loud as actually saying, hey, you can't use used games. That, it really seems to be a massive misunderstanding of what that core audience is that they were trying to reach. Families are not going to be the number one people to buy a new console at $400 or $500.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you still committed to getting an Xbox One? What is so appealing about it for you?
Well, I'm really excited about the ecosystem. bringing in apps from Windows 8, the social sharing, just things like that. I look at Steam, like for example, taking screenshots and sharing it. Like Microsoft has the room, like a feature that I've always wanted. You take a screenshot in the game. Why does it not tag your friends? Like, I want to see like social interaction with games that I haven't seen before.
No,
I think Microsoft is the company that can do that.
I see where you're getting, because obviously that same technology is being presented by Sony as well. They have the share button right there on the controller. But yeah, if you look at sort of the experience of online and trying to integrate other services, Microsoft does have an edge, albeit with both Xbox Live and with what they've been trying to do with Windows, whether people like it or not. It is interesting the way this is all shaken out. There was something I just saw today, which I was most surprised by, which was a survey of European developers that looked like they're actually still more interested in the PS4 than the Xbox One, which I was actually, that's kind of the community that might be able to sort of cut away some of the chatter and a lot of the noise that's out there. But it is interesting to see how they're struggling right now. I have some sense that they're very aware of it, and that hopefully they'll start readdressing and trying to start the conversation over. So, Dustin, you hang in there. And Nick, do you want to bring someone else in?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a pretty good question from the chat, though. It's something that I don't know how this has never come up before. It's very simple. Kuomon asks, what is one game that you've not had the chance to play yet that you would want to, but you simply just haven't had the time to?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, there's a lot of games. And for me, I'm gonna warble for a minute so I can come up with exactly that answer. But I've never been able to sort of sit down and really play Dark Souls. Because, and this is one of those huge problems of sort of the position that I'm in and a lot of my colleagues, is that you end up becoming jack of all trades, master of none. And the level of commitment that a game like that, or a game with really interesting multiplayer, the only way to get good is by playing it repeatedly and really getting experience with it. And I'm always in the situation where I have to move on to the next game, into the next game, into the next game, into the next game. And I think that's one of the reasons why you tend to only see MMOs and certain types of competitive games, that they're covered primarily on sites that serve just that particular community, because they have a staff that is dedicated to that sliver of games or one particular game out there. But yeah, Dark Souls, I need to give it a little more of a shot. I found it so abusive that I didn't understand why people loved it so much. I still wonder if it's more for the bragging rights than it is for the actual joy of playing the game. But it is a fascinating experiment that From Software is doing, and I am a little bit regretful that I have not given it my full time and my full attention. So there you go on that.
Cool.
How about you, Nick?
Oh, God. For me, for the longest time, it was Far Cry 3, and then I finally got through that recently, and it really managed to live up to my expectations.
It's a phenomenal game.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly as fun as everyone says it is. Had a really upsetting moment with it where afterwards I went and started reading interviews with the guy who wrote it, and it sort of colored my experience with it a little bit. Apparently, he was trying to say a lot of things that.
Yeah, it's not. It runs a little swifter and a little more shallow than I think some of the writing staff actually regarded it as.
Right, yeah. I guess the way I'd put it is I liked it better when I thought it was done.
Yeah, I was with you 100%.
Anyway, but yeah, do you want to let in Zanazo?
Yes, Zanazo. That is a great name. Do you mind if I ask where you're from or where that name is from?
I met you at SGC.
Oh, bingo.
Yeah, Elevator, from the wonderful time of the Elevator.
Yeah, I think I met more people at SGC in an elevator than I ever have in my life.
The name comes from Final Fantasy X. It is my actual given name translated into Albed.
Got it. How very industrious of you. So, what brings you to address the Sess? What has been burning and seething inside of you since we saw each other in Dallas only a month ago?
I'm still sad that I missed your panel because of that headache.
Oh.
There were some questions that I wanted to ask you about, what, as many good things as are coming from the new waves of consoles, what are some of the worst trends? What are the apocalyptic visions of where this might be going if things go their absolute worst possible route?
apocalyptic isn't the word I use. Disconcerting is the one. And obviously, I have not seen a ton of these games. I have not played a ton of these games. When you look at Sony with Infamous and with Killzone, and you look at Microsoft, granted, I think Rise is one I would point to, but the fact that we didn't see kind of a deep dive into any one game, Rise probably being the deepest dive, I'm worried that that initial couple of years of games will focus primarily on the easiest thing that you can accomplish, and that is graphical, better graphics. And that you're not, yes, and you have bigger and broader spaces, but you're not looking at what the heightened processing power, what the cloud can actually do for people to really change up attention to gameplay. And that, that you're going to see development teams that are still on such a strict track to get things done that they're not given the time to experiment, to find new ways to interact with games and new ways to come up with gameplay. I don't see that as something that is going to happen throughout the entire course of these consoles, but we want to see that thing that makes everything invigorating and exciting and get an idea of where games can go so people can get re-engaged. It is a little disappointing that right now we're more aware of sequels than we are of new IPs, and that's something that should happen at the start of new consoles because that's the safest time to launch, restart, and get people engaged with a new intellectual property. How about you? What are you worried about?
Well, I'm worried about the trends of DRM and things like. It seems like they're more concerned about making individual sales than they are at access. Like with Steam, you could easily go out and torrent almost anything that they have, and yet Steam makes record sales because of the ease of access, because it's just so easy to grab.
Now, what makes you think that either or one of the consoles will not have the ease of access on the level of Steam?
Well, I was more thinking about Xbox's original concepts of DRM and the direction that Microsoft clearly wants to go.
The 24-hour, the once per 24 hours check-in.
Well, there is that, and how that would screw most of the military out of being able to use it at all.
That's obvious. I'm trying to get a sense where using Steam as that model for a digital service, where you can bring the game in, what you're seeing in the messaging or what's already known about the hardware of either the PS4 or the Xbox One, that looks like that they're going to create hardship. Well, one reason I'm asking is, from a business perspective, the last thing you want to do is give the consumer any more time to rethink their decision. Click a button, you spent the money, boom, you've got it. And to be fair, I mean, that's actually relatively easy on Xbox Live right now with the 360 and on PSN. I've had a couple of issues with PSN. Sometimes we're like, I want to buy this. Why are you making it a little bit hard? Usually it's having to, download another update for the PSN store. But, I mean, do you see a DRM future? Or, I mean, Microsoft retreated on that statement, and obviously Sony was more than emphatic about where their policy stands on that.
I think Jim Sterling said it the best. The war is not over. They could definitely re-implement those after people actually start buying the consoles. And, I don't know, it seems really closed off. It seems really anti-consumer.
I mean, obviously, when you pull back the covers and you see what their original policies were, it definitely comes across that way. The lack of used games. It's one of those things where, God, as I said before, had they brought those matters up and talked about what they consider to be the benefits, and that's where I agree with you on the Steam. Steam just has clear benefits. And so you take a little bit of the DRM, the fact that you have to be online, at least to go offline, that kind of burden, but there seems to be all these really clear benefits. And had they said, okay, we're going to need you to do this, but here are the benefits, I don't know, but I think that we might be having a different discussion right now. Instead, they didn't say anything. Phil Harrison kind of made a misstep in one of his interviews. It became clear that they probably had a policy that people didn't want to see. That's not the way you go about doing it. And so then we pulled back the covers, and then we had this horrible statement from Microsoft that feels like a bunch of lawyers and a bunch of marketers got in a room and I really emerged with the biggest pile of poop I've ever seen in my life. And it was like, oh, so that's what they think of us. And I still contend that there were some good ideas that necessitated those policies, but how are we to know? because they never actually made the case for those in the first place.
Yeah.
And with that, I bet we're going to see a couple other questions to this. So Nick, do you want to bring somebody else in?
Yeah, let's talk to Alexander.
Alexander.
Here we go.
Where are you from?
Yeah, I got one question.
Is that a steering wheel in front of you?
Yeah, I have spent more money on steering wheel setups for sim racing than probably my TV or anything else. So
I just like the idea that you
got the Gran Turismo Academy on my PS3 right now.
Can you show us your collection of steering wheels?
All right, hold on. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All
right, so this is a Fanatic Club Sport wheel.
Uh-huh.
With the pedals and the bass and everything, probably over $1,000.
Uh-huh.
It's got like a motor that does like, I guess, like 50 pounds of force. So like when you go over a curb in like a racing game, the wheel, fights you or whatever. It's got clutch pedals. It's all I made like a rig to house everything out of a failed treehouse attempt. I was with my father actually, and so he helped me build this. We built this together. It was kind of a cool thing. So I didn't really have like a awesome car in high school. I kind of had this.
so yeah. And I don't think you've probably had as awesome a car as what you can pretend you're driving now.
Right, I can drive a Ferrari every day. What's the deal? Why do I need a beater BMW?
So I'm assuming from all of this that you work at Schwinn, right? or something like that.
Funny you should say that. My brother actually worked at Schwinn. He was a professional.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, my goal is to work for an automotive company. But actually, my question has nothing to do about cars. Actually, it's to do about the UI for PlayStation and the Xbox. I really want to know why we haven't seen much of it. Like, to be honest,
I would love to know that too.
Like,
I know.
I don't. It's like they're like it's a thing. You use it. That's it. Have a nice day. Games are great. And it's like I kind of want to see more. Like all they did was show that one kid on the in the trailer park with a $2,000 Sony TV in the video. So he has to be like a drug dealer. So
that video was so silly.
I've never seen.
No, Alexander, you have hit on something that really is kind of the core of my argument. I was saying that if you're buying now, you're buying the story.
Right.
Because I find you to be very, very, very important. And this really goes to Xanaso, sorry, man. Xanaso, sorry. To your point that UI really tells, I think, some of the best idea of what they're regarding to consumer ads. I still contend that the cross-media bar is one of the worst things I've ever seen because there's too much information, and because everything is sized the same way, it's all of equal importance. And it's not very inviting. It's very cold. Obviously for you or I, we know how to manage it, but it doesn't sort of say ease of access. Here's something you might want to pay attention to. Here's some notifications. Here's some games that are available. Microsoft, I think, in contrast, is better than the cross-media bar. But then there's all the BS real estate that we currently get on the Xbox dashboard, where those cool games that are now available are buried somewhere deep inside of it because someone shelled out that many tens of thousands of dollars for permanent placement.
The question kind of goes to like the one thing I think Sony really needs to communicate that they haven't is that the experience of joining up with my friends and playing a game, whatever game it is, needs to be seamless and easy. And fact of the matter is, like, I love my PlayStation, but like it's crap for that. It really is crap.
Yes.
Every friend I talk to, they're like, well, is there a party system on the PS4? Is there this? And like, that's all they want to know. I just want to get in with my friends and play my games, And you can call that social, you can call it whatever you want, but I just don't understand how they can't recognize that. And if they just said, hey, look, we've got party chat, we got cross chat,
I wouldn't say that they haven't recognized it. I think the thing is, can they overcome the hurdle that they've created? I think for a lot of people, myself included, that isn't their area of expertise. Microsoft has made a lot more inroads in that way, and I tend to give them a little more of the benefit of the doubt. Regardless, those are so important to the gameplay experience, and they haven't talked about it. I bet we're going to hear more, and we better, at Gamescom. That's at the end of August out there in Germany. We're going to be covering it from back here in San Francisco because assuming that there is like a press conference or something like that, it can be seen just as easily on the internet than them spending the thousands of dollars to get on a plane to go to Germany for it. If they don't, if either or neither doesn't present that kind of strategy, to me, that is a point of great concern. I think where I do get a little worried, and by worried I mean I care about Sony, is that when they talk about Gaikai, they talk about how they're rolling these aspects of it out. You know, we know about the streaming. We know there's that promise that you can take over someone else's game. How much of that online strategy that we expect from like just what PSN should do is going to be kind of conjoined with Gaikai, and that it may not be ready right there at the launch.
Like, can I play a classic COD match of a PS3 game with over Gaikai with all my friends, like, or is it just congratulations, you unlocked the single player?
Yeah, you know? I mean, that's a good question, but also I don't think that's me. From what I understand from what they said, that won't be available at start because a lot of Gaikai is coming somewhere down the line. I think they need to be a lot more forthright about what of the online will be available at the launch of the game. Once again, this goes and there's a lot of there's probably more of that we need from Microsoft right now. That's where I'm saying that we don't have the full story, and it's just kind of what they want to tell us right now. Obviously, they can. Sony has done an exceptionally good job of telling us some very, very exciting things in contrast to what Microsoft is doing, but the whole picture is not there, and we're already at July.
Right.
So, I have a question for you. Given your taste in racing games, there are so many racing games that are coming out with the launch of the new consoles. Which one stands out to you?
All right. Well, number one, I like what Forza's doing. I appreciate their physics, and I appreciate the research they put into that. And like to me, that's like when with Dan Grinwald or whatever his name is, when he speaks about that, like I really like that. That really makes a difference to me. But this is one of the lesser known things about the Xbox. It's a little technical. The problem I have with the Xbox is the USB interface for the Xbox is XID interface, and it's Microsoft's own proprietary system. And basically, like, you have to pay, if you're a peripheral manufacturer, you have to pay like a pretty hefty license fee to put your peripheral on the Xbox, right? PS3 uses HID, which is standard across PCs. Basically, the driver just has to be integrated into the game to run the hardware, and you're good to go. With Microsoft, it's a specific wheel, and that kind of limits my options, for what I can buy. So they make this great game, that's Forza, which has fantastic physics, fantastic, graphics and multiplayer and all this stuff. But you're forced to one wheel from one company, and
yeah, that's not
it's kind of like you put in all that effort for 90% of the people to play on a controller, and I think what made like Gran Turismo so great and what I started off with is they had like $100 Logitech control wheel, and that's what I started with on the PS2, and like that's kind of what got me hooked, and it was low barrier to entry, and it really got me into it. I know a lot of people I know like. That it makes it easy for them, and that's one thing I'd really like to see is a little bit more support on that on the hardware side, because I'm a little bit more, I guess, hardcore in the racing games. But yeah, that's what I'd like. If Forza does that, then I would definitely strongly consider an Xbox.
That's a very good point, and Xanaso, that really kind of points out what you're saying about those barriers to entry. That the idea that like you should be able to have some freedom, especially from the company that works with computers that tends we tend to be a lot more universal. So,
real quick, what actually does excite me the most is it's not really covered that much. A lot of people who are making racing games for the PC are looking very strongly at the PS4 because of the self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
So the barrier to entry for them is they don't have to go with a publisher, which is kind of hard for these kind of niche sim racing games, right? So they see the PS4, they say, hey, similar architecture, maybe we can port something over and do it at relatively low risk, and like that excites me personally.
That's a very interesting point. That's thank you very much, Alexander. I have not looked at it that way, but yeah, I appreciate that. Hey Nick, do you want to grab something out of chat and then we'll bring in another person?
Absolutely. Blake Dover on YouTube says, with the huge critical and commercial success of The Last of Us, do you expect developers to mimic its style, themes, and pacing like we saw developers do with Uncharted this past generation?
I mean, I don't. Nick, how many people do you think try to ape Uncharted?
I'd say maybe I can think of maybe 3 or 4 examples off the top of my head of just like games that went to that same third-person platformy shooty adventure thing. But
yeah,
Last of Us seems a little more inimitable to me. I don't know about you.
Exactly. Is that it will become so obvious what it's harkening back to. Also, clearly the talent and the work and the effort and the money that went into The Last of Us will be rather prohibitive for anyone to just try to go in there and try to do a clone. What I do hope it transpires is that people will think about addressing narrative, addressing kind of the mechanics of a game and the tone and the style of a game that, you know, doesn't have to mimic what Last of Us does, but they realize that they can be a little bit more daring and that it offers up commercial success. I don't know if all of you out there noticed, but the sales figures that are coming in for Last of Us, it is now, I think, the best-selling game of the year. And I may be wrong on that. You know, I wonder how well the second StarCraft game did. But it has posted numbers that are now in excess of Bioshock Infinite. And when you consider the fact it's only available on the PS3, that is not insignificant by any means.
If I remember right, it had a better opening weekend than Iron Man 3 did. They both came out the same weekend. I think it was Iron Man 3, and it just outperformed a massive Hollywood blockbuster.
If you saw Iron Man 2, I think Iron Man 3 deserved even less of the opening than it got. So, all right, Nick, let's bring someone in.
Cool. Let's talk to Paul Farinelli.
Paul, how are you?
I'm quite good, Adam. What about yourself?
Doing all right. Where are you hailing from?
Auburn, New York, upstate New York.
Okay, cool. So what's on your mind?
I was wondering, well, I was hoping to get your thoughts on something that seems to have sort of slipped under the radar, and basically it's related to Metal Gear Solid 5, and during E3, he gave a roundtable interview where something that struck me as probably a pretty important piece of news, or something that should be worthy of discussion, was that he said he wants to write about race and revenge and how they pertain to global conflict in that game. And I don't know if you saw the extended trailer for it. There's a 9-minute one as opposed to the one they showed in Microsoft's press conference.
God, I could have sworn that lasted 9 minutes sitting there watching it. But,
yeah, it was pretty
with the torture scene, right?
Yeah, with the torture scenes. And well, actually, never mind. Both trailers show at least a few scenes with black, African, I assume, child soldiers. So I'm wondering, I guess, how adequately do you think Kojima will be able to
handle this?
Yeah, will be able to do that justice.
That's very interesting. You know, I remember back when right before Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, he said it was a game about peace. And my antenna went up about skepticism. I still think Metal Gear Solid 2 is a game about how not to do a story. But he does like those movies. And Metal Gear Solid 4 does address some very interesting themes, sometimes in a little bit of a tortured way. But the idea of the commercialization of war, and the thing is, if you've been paying attention in the past decade, there's far too much evidence of how much money private companies make when there is conflict. I mean, I think a lot. I mean, I'm blanking on the name, but we all know that that large company that came in Iraq.
Blackwater, yeah.
Yeah, Blackwater, and then there's the second one. It'll come to me. Dick Cheney was associated with it, and I think it addressed it in an interesting way because it did use kind of a sci-fi rubric, and I think science fiction is so good for trying to address current things because you kind of strip away the sensitivities that people have, and you kind of have the discussion in a safe place. Having said that, look, let's be frank. Japanese games have not been the best about addressing matters of race.
Yeah, I was going to say
I think Resident Evil 5 is very much on top of the list. But you're saying?
Oh no, I would just say I would think that Kojima is a much more thoughtful writer than anyone writing Resident Evil 5.
Exactly. So that's why, in the instance, if it's Kojima tackling it, I think he can do it. It's one of those. I've always said that it's kind of like certain types of humor. We all think that certain jokes are acceptable, and it's like, yes, they are, but most jokes, George Carlin can tell them, and no one else can to make them funny. And it's also, I think games need to address matters like this. But once you start to go down that path, that bar starts to get higher and higher about being thoughtful, intellectual, and sensitive as you address those matters. I'm actually very interested to see where Kojima goes with that. I want to see even more games go in that direction. But his curious style in storytelling, it really might be the thing I think if he gets more clear-minded about some of the social issues he wants to address, he might actually improve rather than hiding more and more underneath those very bizarre storytelling thing.
Yeah, I agree.
He's his manner of storytelling.
He started trades and obfuscation.
Where did you see that interview? That's something I haven't gotten to see myself.
It was posted on Polygon.com.
Okay.
And
I know this
also
guy.
Destructoid.
I'm well aware of that. I definitely want to check that out. That's the whole problem about doing E3 the way I did, where I'm sitting at a table interviewing people. I don't know what's happening. It's something like I have to kind of rediscover E3 in the following weeks. Yet I tend to be so burnt out and exhausted that the last thing I want to think about is a video game or even checkers. I want to think about like puppies bringing me coffee and then telling me stories. Actually, I've never thought that before, so let's pretend I never said that. Nick, before I start to go into a jet lag-infused dementia, do you want to bring somebody else in?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hear from Cody Childs. I think we tried him once before and we couldn't get it working, like a few episodes back.
Cody? Hit that mute button.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
There we go.
Hey, it's working.
Round of applause. Persistence. See, perseverance. It's the little Cody that could. So, hey, where are you from?
Iowa City.
Iowa City. I would assume that's in Iowa.
Yeah.
Of course, there is Kansas City and Missouri, and like I don't know why people didn't kind of get around a table and work that problem out, but yes, you are in Iowa with Iowa City. What's on your mind?
Nothing in particular. I kind of wanted to get in because I didn't get in last time. I particularly wanted to come in because of the console discussion here that I've been hearing going on about like the Xbox One, and I've been doing a lot of PC gaming for a long time, and so I have.
Okay, I have a quick question. How do you define PC gaming? Is that any game you play on a PC, or games that can only be played on a PC?
Any game you can play on a PC.
Okay.
Like any game you can play on a PC. So, with enough emulators, you could play anything. But that's kind of beside the point. What I'm going for, what I'm kind of wanted to bring up is like something that I don't hear said often enough is that the DRM that Microsoft put on the Xbox One is really in excess of what was necessary to do the kind of sharing features that they have, I think. Like, if you look at this...
Once again, just so everyone's on the same page, you mean the once every 24 hours check-in?
Yeah, the once every 24-hour check-in. The rumors of always online was obviously overbearing. But yeah, basically the once every 24-hour check-in is not necessary. Like, Steam, I think, has a one-time check where it downloads a file to your computer saying, okay, this is your Steam account and these are the games that are downloaded on it, and that's how the offline mode works.
Right, but I guess the one thing is you have to go online to go back offline. I'm painfully familiar with all of this because I did try to play on the plane flight out to Russia and on the way back. And so it was one of the first times I've really kind of investigated all that aspect. I mean, yes, that is obviously far less onerous than, well, I mean, it's weird. It's to go offline, you have to do a check-in. Yeah, I mean, it is. But
then once you do that check-in, you can be offline. You can be offline for a pretty long time, and
it depends on the game, which one.
Yeah,
it does depend on the game. Like obviously, if you tried to go on Steam. If SimCity was offered through Steam, let's put it that way. If SimCity was offered through Steam, then you would have to be online, because SimCity has its own DRM like that. But
I bet there's so many people at Steam going, man, I'm so glad we dodged that bullet. Thank you, Origin, for taking that nightmare off our hands. I mean,
yeah, definitely. But
I don't know what the full story is. The story I hear from Microsoft, and I'm not saying I believe it, is that they wanted these updates. They somehow have this vision of something that's constantly talking to, mother brain, and I'm still a little bit skeptical about that. I mean, it goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier. All we know is that there's supposed to be a once per 24 hours check-in with no why attached to it, and that's the part that just baffles me. And that maybe in their own minds, this was more than just DRM, that they had some great idea that helped drag DRM along with it. It's like, hey, look, we get our cake and we eat it too. It's just, I have no idea. I actually think that they still may have had a stronger argument by saying always online. You know, because then the idea of constant updates makes a little bit more sense. But a ping every 24 hours doesn't just sort of translate to me as all this data suddenly, falling into your hard drive and updating everything.
Right.
Yeah, like once every 24 hours, that sounds like it's just DRM, basically.
Yeah, it does. It completely does.
There's no upside. Peter Norson.
Picking up on you like your mom.
Right. Yeah. In the chat, Peter Nelson says, Adam, do you think the cloud is still going to be a big deal for the Xbox One, considering that much of the outrage was due to the lack of broadband infrastructure in the U.S.?
Yes, I actually do think the cloud is going to be. I think the benefits of the cloud happen a few years down the line, but as I pointed out before, look at some of the games that are out there: Titanfall, Watch Dogs, The Crew, Need for Speed Rivals. Whereas the console may not require you to go online, I think we're going to see more and more games that require a very persistent internet connection. And that if you want to appreciate the software, that's going to force you back into the position that people seem to get so upset about just with the 24-hour check-in. That, when Microsoft made the retreat, all they did is say, like, okay, we as the console manufacturer do not require this. But in terms of what happens both with software from Microsoft and software from any other manufacturer, that can bring its own set of rules in terms of what level of connectivity that you're supposed to maintain. And it is going to be in most publishers' best interest to have games that are best appreciated by only going online, because that's going to keep you engaged. That's going to in some ways is going to cut out services like GameFly out of the equation. Cody, because we were just talking, that's relevant to that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the cloud gaming is definitely going to be involved in the next console generation in a big way, and especially the generation after this upcoming one, it's going to be even more.
If there is one. Here's the theory that I have is that if the cloud really starts to take on the role that at least Microsoft is saying, that you can keep on offloading more and more processing to it, in theory, the Xbox One becomes more and more like a portal, and their improvements are where they can control it, and that's on their back end, on their cloud with the servers. That's an interesting business move, because you can get more and more people on board because the price of the console is going to go down year to year to year to year. I don't know if this is just pie in the sky. Hey, cloud, pie, sky. I almost made it funny.
Well, think of all of the stuff that exists on the Xbox 360 and PS3 now that they never considered. Like, the original size limit for Xbox Live Arcade games was like, what, 2,200 megabytes or something like that? Like, yeah. There's a lot of stuff now that they added in retroactively. I think it's only going to get crazier from here. And also, I think, like, to your point, Adam, Microsoft probably wishes pretty bad that they wouldn't have to abandon the install base of the 360 right now, for example.
Yeah.
Like, having to start from 0 users sucks for them.
Yeah.
And I also think one more point that I think I should bring up is that while the industry as a whole is going to gravitate more and more towards cloud gaming, more and more towards online features, something that I don't think is going to happen that a lot of people are predicting is that I don't think the game disc is ever going to go away. I think there's always going to be some publishers out there for some single-player games particularly where the game disc is always going to play a role. And, it just kind of makes sense if you look at just games in general, not necessarily just video games, but games in general. We still have Dungeons and Dragons. We still have live sports. We still have all of these other games that people play, and even though, they've arguably graduated onto other mediums, like there are pen and paper games that you play just purely online.
Yeah, but the disc isn't the game, it's the code on the disc. Dungeons and Dragons, I guess in essence, actually, you don't really need to buy a Dungeons and Dragons set to play D&D.
No, you don't.
You need to know the rules.
Right. You just need to know the rules. The rules of the game, like the code on the disc is the rules of the game. The text in the book is the rules of the game. And it's really all just down to the medium that some people prefer. And I think there are always going to be people that just want that disc, not necessarily because because
I think
they might not want that internet. They see that internet connection as a tether more than a.
Here's something to consider. I have heard stories that to get that packaging for the Xbox 360, you're already spending $15 That's how much you're losing to Microsoft.
Jeez.
There's so much money to be gained by cutting that physical out of the equation that the only way I see the disc happening in the near future, you're paying $100+ for a special edition. You're getting a bunch of other doodads. In terms of that kind of dull, boring, thing that we all have on our shelves, I bet that phases out in 2 to 3 years. They just kind of need to re-educate and find more. They have to incentivize people to buy things digitally, be it with a bonus, with something that changes the timing of when you get access to the game or to the DLC or something. There's a lot of money that's being lost in the pressing of the disc and the making of the packaging and the shipping and dealing with the retailer. The retailer is the other part of the equation that gets complicated because right now they need to be really cozy with GameStop and Walmart and Best Buy because that's still how they're going to get Xbox Ones and PS4s into people's hands. But there is so much money that could be preserved and that can bring down, like all of a sudden, like the profit. Because we all know the profit margins on games can be really, really tight, and they need to see that they can make a lot more money, and you don't need to be a mega hit to even start to see profits coming in. So, it should be interesting to see how it plays out because it's going to require a re-education of all consumers. But
really quickly, we don't even see this with the movie industry yet. I mean, we see the shift of trying to go digital, but even the movie industry is behind.
And once again, I mean, I think the way that they're kind of accomplishing it is what Netflix is doing with original programming.
Yeah.
You're getting people to start to look at, oh, hold on, I can find entertainment without there being a conventional retail transaction.
Honestly, I'm personally really excited about the Steam model coming to consoles.
I am.
And one of these days, we are going to be completely digital. It's going to happen with updates constantly happening, and you can't release something on media and these games changing so constantly.
On a scale of 1 to 10, do you guys think there's any chance at all that they're going to pass the savings of that $15 for the plastic and the shipping? Are we going to see any of that? Like, we're not going to see any of that.
Oh, to the consumer? No, we're not going to see that.
No.
In a roundabout way, one can say that we might see benefits of it, but no, the publisher is going to see it. But that means you might be able to do a riskier game and still see a profit rather than everything is Battlefield, everything is Call of Duty, everything is just those games that know that they're going to hit those numbers. Yeah. That there's. I mean, it's scary out there when you look at most games that come out. They do make money, but they make so little profit. That's why we're seeing so many of the problems that we're encountering with lack of creativity and overabundance of sequels and the like.
What I do think we're going to see, though, is if they try to take advantage of the fact that they're forcing people into a pricing model, people only have so much disposable income. So if they try to squeeze more money than the market has, then they're going to get pushback from that, and I think they're going to be forced to adopt some type of Steam sale-esque system where games get cheaper over time.
Okay, no. In terms of those benefits, I was when Nick had his question, I was thinking at initial launch.
Right.
Yeah. They don't take advantage. They are not looking at Steam and how they can get people re-engaged with purchasing by losing money on one. No. Then they are so myopic they deserve to fail.
I think that's part of why the closed system in the DRM freaked us all out so much, is because we have zero evidence that Microsoft is willing to play that game with the consumer. Like, in the past couple months, you've seen, like there was a summer week-long sale where you could buy Dark Souls for $5 on Xbox Live, and, they're dipping their toe in the water with that, but we're not anywhere close to Steam yet.
No. I mean,
we actually have seen a lot to the contrary, like games for Windows Live and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, once again, hopefully we get some clarity on this. We get a sense of philosophy on this at Gamescom. If not, I don't like the idea that they're still deciding. Man, how many times have we heard, well, we're still talking with our partners. It's like, we'll talk. You don't get to have press conferences unless you have clarity. Okay, that should be the new rule.
I like that rule.
With everything that comes with games. It's like, we haven't made up our mind. Okay, then go back in your room and make up your frickin' mind, and then you can talk to us, okay? If any of us tried to do our job and kind of tried to take on these luxuries of excuses and we're going to do a presentation, but we don't really know what we're talking about, we'd be out on our ass. So, once again, I hope both Sony and Microsoft are aware of this because it's becoming a point of some frustration, but it can be all resolved with kind of the season that begins with Gamescom, which I hope will be the beginning of a lot of information that rolls out, or hopefully all comes out at once and then becomes a point of discussion going forward. Hey, Nick, do you want to do one more thing from chat?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's see here. Here's one from Google+. This is a pretty interesting thing that I don't think I've heard anyone talk about. Cameron Fraser asked, do you think the DualShock 4's touchpad is severely underlooked, or is it just a gimmick? We've hardly heard about any games that utilize it.
No, the cool part is it's not a huge selling point. This is a wonderful change from where we were this generation with motion control, where it's like, it's all about this. Look, we can play Warhawk by going like this. It's there. It's available. The developer can do something with it. At the very least, it's yet another button. It is depressible. There's kind of a click that comes to it. And even if it doesn't involve motion, you have one more place that you can have interaction with the game that opens up possibilities with the developers. Is it going to revolutionize anything? I sure hope not. I just want it to be one more facet. And a great example is the back touch screen on the Vita. Media Molecule's phenomenal game for it called Tearaway, that's coming out in a couple of months. They're like the first ones that have really found an interesting use for it. You can see your finger poking up when you touch the bottom of it. It's really awesome. But it took that long for someone to take advantage of that. But thankfully, it was there, and it opened up someone's kind of creative juices, and they came up with that. So I think it's good that it's there, and it's good that it isn't a big deal, because that has got to be the attitude towards motion gaming, and all the newfangled things that are supposed to be a selling point this generation should just be an available accessory that everybody has and can be developed to.
Cool. Do you want to hear from Ben Stead?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, Ben. How
Hi.
are you doing? Where were you, Ben?
I'm in Manchester, England. Yeah.
Ben, where'd your guitar controller go? You had a guitar.
Yeah, I thought I needed something in front of my face. This guy had a steering wheel. I decided guitar.
Everyone hide behind a peripheral.
Yeah, I've got.
You know what? I'm going to bring out my Dreamcast microphone, the big blue balloon that you stuck on that ridiculous controller.
Yeah, I want to go back a bit and stand up for the XMB. I think the XMB for me is my favorite UI.
Okay, you've got to sell me on this. Okay,
because
I'm giving you 2 minutes. And maybe
right, okay, fair enough. It takes about 300 clicks to get to anything. Like, that's fair enough. You know, it's ridiculous.
And that's wonderful. How?
It's good exercise for your thumb.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm playing Guitar Hero. I just play with my thumb now. I'm not good. The thing is, there's no ads. Like, that's what I love. I'm not. As soon as I boot my PS3, I've got my beautiful little icons. You know, I've got my crazy little background that, you know, I've got my internet memes background that Sony seem to be doing weirdly. And, you know, there's no ads. There's no ads telling me, hey, check out Netflix because we've got 40-year-old virgin. It's like, great, okay, I don't care. I can just go straight to my game and play it. And if I want to check out the store and I want to check out the ads, then I can. They're not forced on you.
Except it takes a good 3 minutes to get into the store.
It's worth it, though.
Look, here's
3
the thing,
minutes.
But it is, and for you and me, I know how to navigate around it, even though I still get scared sometimes when I'm going into certain tabs under the system, column, because I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I don't want to mess around with it too much.
Yeah, like it takes 6 years for me to get to my sound settings, but that's okay because there's no ads.
I don't like the ads because it's usually trying to get me to get something that anybody worth a damn knows is stupid. But I would like something that kind of, and this is also with an eye towards people that are less experienced with this type of technology, something that helps drive your eye towards what's important. Be that this is where my games are, this is where my videos are.
But for me, Pizza Hut having a new stuffed crust isn't that important.
I'm there with you, Ben. I'm there with you, but it's about my mom.
I mean, stuffed crust is pretty rad, but I just want to play whatever video game I've got in my console.
The reality has to lie somewhere between Sony's complete lack of hierarchy and Microsoft's hierarchy that prioritizes people paying to show you ads, even though we're all already paying $60 a year for Xbox Live.
Yeah.
There's got to be a middle ground, right?
I think they said they were reducing the ads in the one.
No, I would like to think so. I think it's also just something that gives me a quick survey of what is available in terms of content, not we're prioritizing this one particular. If they had a tab that said order crappy food, I get it. Not Pizza Hut. So
I would press that if it took my payment and just delivered surprise crappy
a random one. Yeah.
Yeah, just turned up. Then great.
I mean, it's really where the XMB got me, and it was Ken Kutaragi's near elitist way of looking at design. And when the PS3 was announced at its $600 price tag in the States, I can't remember how much it was in the UK, which was abominable.
£1 billion and one finger.
Okay, I don't know if people remember what he said. He said, "This is a good machine. People should take a second job to be able to afford it."
Yeah.
That is the most in your own ass thing I have ever heard in my life.
I think I was gonna say, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The way Sony have won it, personally, I feel the hate for Xbox One is justified purely because it's reactionary to the terrible, terrible messaging that Microsoft have been putting out. Like, the thing is, Sony genuinely have been listening to people. Even when Microsoft say they're listening, by listening, they mean, we'll give you Defense Grid and Assassin's Creed 2 for free. That's not listening. That's going, we can kind of do something.
It's a charade. What it is it's a charade of caring. And I get you, because especially just the whole idea that they're not just listening, that Sony's not just listening to consumers, they're listening to developers. I mean, there are now more than enough stories of developers who were approached by Sony to say, like, what do you need to see in this box?
Yeah.
That's a very strong statement.
Yeah, I think the only time Microsoft has listened, according to the news, is when they shouldn't have been. So, Microsoft, just back off,
I think Microsoft really listened is when EA called.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I still think one of the more questionable things that happened in light of this, all the nonsense surrounding Microsoft and them retreating on their policies was kind of EA going like, oh yeah, we're really happy to see this. It's like, no.
Yeah,
go look at the press conferences.
Imagine after the reversal, they went in and just went, yeah, those online passes, are they still in the bin? Do we still have that code on that USB stick? Because we need to put them back right in. Also, I think it's 100% totally unfair and totally missing the point of Steam to ever compare it to Steam. The reason Steam works is not purely down to used game, it's because of how open the PC is. I can go to Green Man Gaming, I can go to Different Mark, I can get a humble indie bundle, and if Steam isn't working, I have still hundreds of games, not hundreds because I'm not minted, but I've got loads of games DRM free. Microsoft, that's it. You've got the Xbox Live Marketplace, that's it. That's why anyone going, well, they can copy the Steam. It's coming. It's Steam's console. It's like, no, it's not. Because
likewise, I think there's a reasonable expectation that most computers are connected to the internet, and like the idea that you buy an Xbox One, bring it back to your house, plug it in, and for any reason ever, even if it's just for a week, that you have a box made for games that you can't play games on. Like, I think that's what.
Yeah, I've seen people like, well, if you can't play games, just go outside and learn something. It's like, no, I paid a lot of money for this box. Let me play it whenever.
It's one of those. That's just a. I think the circumstances under which that would have happened would have been minimal. Having said that you could ever. Okay, if you bought a car, and the guy who sold you the car was like, this is gonna run really fine.
Every 24 hours.
Completely shit the bed one of these days.
Yes, gasoline DRM.
Yeah.
If you don't go on the motorway once every 24 hours, your wheels are going to fall off. Everyone will be like, that's the most ludicrous car in the world. I'm not buying that car.
And the thing is that, for most people, something will break in your car. We assume that. But to put that front and center is something that you're making me that aware of. That's a little harebrained, I would have to say. Hey, Nick, do you want to bring in one more person before we have to kind of bring down this this address success?
Our last guest is Shane Robertson.
Shane Robertson, how are you doing? Unmute.
There we go. Hey, Shane, can we hear you?
There we go.
There we go. Hey, Shane, where are you?
I'm calling from Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Hey, cool. So what's on your mind? Since you're going to have the closing out question of Address to Sess, no pressure.
I kind of wanted to go back to the digital sales and everything. I'm kind of a sucker for kind of collector's editions, depending on how much they cost and stuff. And wonder when we eventually do go all digital, which will probably happen. But I'm wondering, how collector's editions will still work out, because I know some come with like statues and stuff, and I'm kind of a big collector and stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, there's money to be made on the collector's edition. Those are for, let's call them the super fans of a particular title. I had this one thought that, okay, back in the old days, and I might be dating myself so painfully, it's going to make me cry on the inside. So somewhere in the 90s, like there was like Real Player, and you could download Real Player over your 56K modem. And what they did is they also mailed you the disc. And I could see that what you'll do is you can download the game at a higher price, but you'll receive a box of cool stuff that just doesn't include the disc.
Yeah.
Because no one says like, oh my God, I have a disc full CD-ROM. Oh, I'm gonna hang it off my willy and run around all happy. If you do that, please do not identify yourself because you have problems.
I do that. I do that.
But yeah, I had a feeling you did there, Ben.
It's really warm outside, so.
I heard it's like 90 degrees in England.
Yeah, I was going to put my fan in my face, but I decided the Guitar Hero controller was a bit more relevant to the conversation.
Well, anyways, I mean, that's how I see the collector's edition coming. Obviously, you could open up a marketplace where you don't even have to buy the entire thing. A lot of collector's editions have the two things I really like, and that one thing that I am embarrassed to have, but I don't throw it away. That you could, like, hey, I want the art book, I want the statue, and I want the dice that I'm never going to use. I mean, I think, once again, there's opportunities out there. I do not see the collector's edition going away. I just don't think the disc part of the collector's edition is going to be as important.
Yeah, because we could always go without the disc, because, I mean, seriously, it's starting to take up space for as much as people buy games nowadays. It's just a common thing, just like DVDs, you know? So,
no, if you saw that's something I did back in November. When I moved here to San Francisco with far less space than I had in Los Angeles, I had to go through a very painful procedure because I had nowhere to put my games in their packages. I had to take them out of their cases and put them in sleeves in large binders. And it was traumatic. Like my male brain that wants to collect things couldn't accept that. And so it was like a bottle of whiskey and my wife offering words of encouragement that you would give a 10-year-old trying to learn how to swim. Like, you're doing great, baby. You're doing great, baby. I'm like, I can't do this. This is wrong. But yeah, I think if we take ever owning it out of the equation, a lot of that, and I call it the fetishization of stuff. That, like, once we have the stuff, it's hard to part with the stuff. But if we never have the stuff in the first place, we may realize that we never needed the stuff to begin with.
3D printers. It's the future. If Google can print food, I can print my 10-foot statue of Arthas doing a backflip.
Hey, real quick, Alexander.
That's a fascinating idea. I like that, Ben.
Yeah.
I want to know real quick what Alexander was just playing, because.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. So this is this thing called. All right. This is actually pretty cool. This is a good way to close. There's this thing called GT Academy. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Where basically you've got this competition and the fastest racers go online. They compete, go through a couple tiers, and the winner of the competition gets a real life race contract. And it's kind of, just to put it in short, racing is a very competitive profession, and it's basically either money or extreme talent. And this is it's just so unique to have video games be a part of this, but it's really one of the best ways to get into racing. And it's funny how this kind of theme has evolved, and it's something I hope we see. I think we're going to see as a trend. It's going to be niche, but it's going to become a greater trend within the racing industry.
Well, with what you said earlier about, so obviously the more open platform that the PS4 looks to be, that kind of niche finding a home in a large audience.
I'd love to find it.
Sounds like a great possibility. All right, guys. Well, that was this Address to Sess. I need to do a shout-out. I want to do a shout-out to our sponsor, and that is Full Sail University. Obviously, you guys love to play video games. Have you thought of creating them? Whether you're interested in programming, art and animation, story creation, or even producing games, there's a game degree program at Full Sail University that fits your needs. Full Sail grads have worked on titles such as Red Dead Redemption, the Call of Duty series, and more. If you're looking for an online program, Full Sail's Game Art and Game Design Bachelor's degree programs utilize Full Sail's immersive education platform, giving you the ability to earn your degree from anywhere in the world. So visit fullsail.edu/address to learn more. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us here on this Address to Sess. We'll be doing this again in 2 weeks. Let's wait and see what happens in the coming weeks to see if we have sort of a rallying topic that we can discuss. Although if you've been watching this entire show, I think new consoles will yet again be a very important part of the discussion. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.